I'm André Miceli from MIT Technology Review Brasil, and this is ACES. I am with Professor Stephanie Woerner. She's a research scientist at MIT CISR, the Center for Information Systems Research. Professor, I will start with the concept. There are many definitions of the term innovation. Which one is the most appropriate in your opinion? What is innovation for you?
So when my colleague Peter Weil and I talk about innovation, we're talking about, we typically measure it in terms of revenues from new products and services introduced in the last 3 years. So when we think about innovation, we're looking at usually these new products and services, although there is a piece of getting companies to become future ready, the term that we use to describe firms that are ready to compete in the digital economy. There also has to be innovation at the operational level too. So when we think about innovation there, we're looking at modularity, we're looking at automation, we're looking at reuse. It's a different kind of innovation. So those are the two ways that we think about innovation, really these new products and services and these revenues that you get from them. And then the second is thinking about how can you increase your operational efficiency and creating components and modularity and automation and reuse.
Personally, I like very much the idea of associating innovation not only with selling more, but also with being more efficient. This is totally relevant and, of course, everywhere. Do you think this is just a hype? Why companies are discussing innovation every time and everywhere?
Well, I think that the market really demands of it, of companies. In our new book that's going to be coming out in October 2022, Future Ready, the basis of that book is that firms have to do two things to compete in the digital economy. The first is that they have to continually take out costs. So it's really around that operational efficiency that you talk about, this automation, this standardization, finding the one best way to do something. And then the second thing is around innovation and delighting your customers, creating new products and services. And the companies that can do both of those at the same time, the companies that are ambidextrous, are those that we call future ready. So innovation is really at the heart of all of this. And it's really demanded by your investors, the economic environment. That's how companies are going to succeed.
So you have done a huge research about what is to be future ready for a company. I'd like to hear from you more about that, what it was about and what were your main findings.
We started by trying to think about what it was, what described companies that were future ready. And when we think again about these companies, they're ambidextrous, taking out costs and innovating. They have a great customer experience. They really focus on modularity, these idea that you're going to make components and then you're going to reuse those components over and over again. That fits into your standardization. It also fits into really improved customer experience, because anytime you can make your customer experience more predictable, say for opening a new account or something like that, it's better for your customer because they don't have to think of a new way to do it every time they come to your company. But you also have these other things that you have to be able to do. You have to be able to use your data well. So building an evidence-based culture, thinking about who you're going to partner with. What we're finding in this new digital economy is that companies typically can't do everything themselves. And so you need to figure out who you're going to partner with, and then how do you make it easy to digitally partner? So how do you have the right kinds of APIs? How do you onboard a partner easily and then off board when you go to when you've finished that, say, solution that and you're moving on to a new product and service. The other pieces that we're looking at is internally, how do you get you need to get the right talent. So talent is a great piece of being future ready. And how do you develop them? And then what do you have to put in place so that you have rapid learning? And some of these things all tie together. So when you're talking about an evidence-based decision making, that's going to fit in with the rapid learning, and it's going to fit in with the right kind of talent that you have. We have a number of ways that we describe a future ready company, so it's a company that is really taking costs out, innovating, thinking about the customer, putting them at the beginning, and then having these supports in place, this rapid learning, evidence-based decision making, working in an ecosystem to all deliver on that customer promise.
Well, there is one thing that always catch my attention. There is how people see innovation in their company. Many people ignore innovation because they feel like their roles in their companies do not allow them to innovate. It's like, if innovation is a C-level thing, a C-level responsibility. What do you have to say to them?
I think that in some places in the company, there may not be as much innovation, but with my colleague, Christine Derry, we talked about the empowered workforce. And really there, what you're looking at is sometimes it's not grand innovation. Sometimes it's not a brand new product or service, but sometimes it's developing that component that's going to be part of those brand new products and services. Sometimes it's going to be building that component that's going to help you standardize and have a better customer experience. So I think the way that we look at innovation is it really suffuses throughout the whole entire company. Now, for some of your products and services that you're looking far ahead that are going to need some real scientific or other kinds of development, sure, the whole rest of the company may not be involved in that. But I think that there are opportunities for innovation throughout the company. I think it's a way of framing what you're doing. I would argue that figuring out how to automate a process so that it becomes more predictable, more reliable is a form of innovation. It's just as much a form of innovation as creating that new product and service that's going to go and lead to a stream of revenues. It may not have quite the reputation that the new products and services does, but I think it's just as important to the company because, and in fact, that kind of innovation really shows that you're a disciplined company.
So we were talking about the roles and the people, but I'd like to hear your thoughts about the environment. In countries like Brazil, we have a lot of multinational companies, and they have to deliver results to US and Europe. And this pressure changes the metrics and, of course, the behavior of our executives. How is it possible to innovate in countries like Brazil?
Well, I think that you're describing what a lot of companies, in fact, a lot across a lot of countries do see, is that you have demands from your investors. You have demands from the stock market for quarterly returns. And this is a problem. It is hard sometimes to get the time and the resources in place to innovate, which is why a lot of the best companies that we see at MIT CISR try to build in and create this discipline and try to start small and then bring that bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I would say to the companies in Brazil, yes, you do have to go and show those kinds of results. But where is a place that you can look for what I would call a small win, where you can start and people can see how you do it? So think about, I would, instead of giving yourself a very big target, if this is the start with something that you know that you can actually tackle. So maybe it's going to be, I want it to be easy for a customer to do business with us in our most profitable part of the company, part of the business. And there we're going to have one way to open an account. And for every customer, that's going to be the only way that they're going to open an account so that they can predict. When we talk to companies who've undergone a digital business transformation, many of them start with a specific objective and achieve that objective and then build on it. So they may have a very long-term goal of transforming the company and becoming more innovative, but they start by a lot of them by cleaning up what they have in place so that they will have not as much legacy and that they will have put themselves in a place where that they can build on what they have. If I look at two companies that I know have really transformed themselves, DBS Bank, they spent a certain amount of time really getting their systems, getting rid of legacy, figuring out how to move to the cloud. And then from there, they really started putting in many more innovations. If you look at Schneider Electric, they went and started to figure out, well, how do we make it better for the customer to do business with us, and used a CRM type of approach to get their foot in the door and get started on that transformation. Now, the transformation itself took several years, but they started with one goal. And I think that with companies in Brazil, with these investors that are demanding to see results, that's how you may have to do it, because you're not going to have the ability to put forth a very big target and then say, that's what we're going for. Might be better to put forward a small target, achieve it, and then say, see, we've done this. Now let's go on to the next thing.
You have described an interactive process, just like an agile method, with, by the way, started in IT area and now is everywhere. Do you think is it feasible for a company to innovate without IT support? Do you think the business area can do it alone?
I would be hard pressed to say that businesses can act alone, at least in the long term. Uh, as my colleague Jeannie Weil, she really argued for the importance of platforms. That in the world that we live in now, you are not going to have a successful business without having a really great operational backbone. You need to be thinking about how you're going to interact with your partners, and it's going to be through the platform. The world is moving faster. You're not going to be able to do a lot of these really people intensive partnerships. You want to figure out how to streamline those and make them simpler and easier to plug and play. So there are certainly going to be some innovations that are going to be business driven and may only be through the business, but I think that you're going to find out that it's going to be very few and far between that they don't involve your information technology, your digital people. The internet, the systems, digital is all too important now for the business units to go at it alone. And in fact, what they risk by going it alone is building more spaghetti and making it much more difficult to actually transform themselves. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen occasionally, but there is a pitfall for firms that are going to rely on that. And that's going to be the complexity that you're going to build will really hold you back in terms of being successful.
Going back to the idea of the steps, what is the first step in creating a culture of innovation?
Boy, you certainly need to have a vision by your top management team. But it's really going to be important to change the habits of all your firms. You talked about the agile methodologies. And when we think about digital business transformation, two of the pieces that I think are really important in developing a culture of innovation really are around new ways of working. And that's because this iterative way of working, this learning from the data, the cross-functional teams that you see in agile methods all become very important. And as people change the way that they work, they change their habits. And that is a big part of really getting and developing a new culture. The other thing that we see in our research on digital business transformation is this need to develop a platform mindset. And then that feeds into those agile ways of working, because as you're moving forward and you're thinking about using data to drive your decisions, you realize that you've got to have a platform that has the data on it, that you have to have your data consolidated. So I think that those two things really kind of work in tandem to help a company build a new culture, with the agile ways of working, that methodology being very important because you're really changing people's habits. But you also do need a vision from your top management team so that your people know which direction they're moving in.
Professor, one last question. You'll be launching a book later this year about the future-ready organizations. What was the process of writing this book, and what were the main differences between the companies you researched?
So we started the book by thinking about what companies needed to look like to be able to succeed in the digital economy. And we came up with this notion that a company had to be future ready. And I talked a little bit about these most successful companies that are both operationally efficient, pulling out costs, but at the same time, really innovating to deliver on customer expectations. So they're taking out costs and they're really engaging their customers and delivering a great customer experience. And so when we looked at companies, we saw that there were some companies that were what we called future ready, but so many companies were really struggling with legacy systems, this complex landscape of processes, data, and technology, which at MIT CISR we've been studying for many, many years. We call it spaghetti. And in fact, we call it silos and spaghetti because we see that business units have their own processes, their own data. And to put things together, you can either decide to do point to point and create a lot of spaghetti, or you can decide to put a platform into place. And what we discovered was that many, many companies, over half of the companies that we studied were in silos and spaghetti. It didn't mean that you didn't have great people, but because of that complexity, your people, the people that are in companies that have a lot of silos and spaghetti, often are great performers, but that's because they engage in heroics. And so the goal is to put into place a platform and use that platform to drive out costs and to deliver on the expectations of your customers. And we found that there were 4 pathways that companies could get to future ready and really start realizing value from digital. And so that's what the book is about. We describe each chapter. There's a chapter on each of the pathways. There's a chapter on the leadership that is needed to get there. We have assessments that are going to be in the book so companies can work together, fill in the assessment, and see how they compare to top performers. That's one of the things that we usually do in our research, is look to see what top performers do. And then finally, at the end, we propose a dashboard to help companies see if they're realizing that value from digital that they're hoping to get out of a digital business transformation. So we're very excited about it, and we're really looking forward to talking about it as we get closer to publication date, October 2022. And the book is called Future Ready.
And I'm also very excited to read it. Professor Stephanie Woerner, research scientist at the MIT Center for Information Systems Research, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I look forward to our continued collaboration.
Guys, this was ACES, and I am André Miceli. Stay with us for more at MIT Technology Review Brasil. Bye.